Hello and welcome to the NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. Well, the Prime Minister has finally reshuffled his cabinet and his Council of Ministers. About 12 members have been shown the door. We've got a whole lot of new members that have come in. The reshuffle checks all the boxes. We are told that there are 27 OBCs, there are about 20 members from the scheduled castes and tribes, 11 women, the average age of the cabinet has come down, etc., etc., etc. So he's ready for whatever political election is round the corner. But what about governance? What about administration? Can the new team actually meet the challenges that have been there and are there still, whether it's COVID, whether it is China, whether it is the economy? Has Prime Minister Modi been able to instill that confidence in us? Will also this new team be able to delegate? Will the Prime Minister delegate and allow the new cabinet ministers to work on their own, or will it again be a centralized setup? That is the question that I've got a panel of experts to help me try and answer. Joining me is Sanjay Baru, Smita Prakash, Pavan Verma, Shankar Iyer, and Suhail Seth. Dr. Baru, I'll begin with you first. Do you feel that the new cabinet can answer all the challenges that are there before us? That's the big ticket question, isn't it?
Well, a cabinet can answer all the challenges provided your cabinet functions like a cabinet. When you have a system which is presidential and everything is run by the Prime Minister and his chosen few, how is the composition of the cabinet relevant? I'm not even sure if the three important cabinet committees, the Cabinet Committee on Security, the Cabinet Committee on Political Affairs, and the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs have ever met in these 7 years. At least I don't see any newspaper reportage. I mean, I remember when we had the Manmohan Singh government, there would be regular meetings of these three, CCA, CCPA, and CCS, and this would be reported in the media. Now, I have not seen, maybe I don't follow all the media, but this is not a cabinet form of government. So the composition of the cabinet is not that relevant. You have two people running the show, the Prime Minister and the Home Minister, and the rest march to their tune.
Then, Shankar, will they be able to execute the decisions well? Has he put the right men to at least execute whatever decisions are taken by the big two? Shankar Iyer?
So let me just, this is a succession plan which rests on a PPP model, which address the pandemics, the public perception, party affairs, and poll preparedness. Outcomes are not known because these people have, so basically what we are looking at, we will have to see what the script is like, what is the new thing, new angle, new focus that they're having. What's happened is, since 2014, the aspiration in India has been about maximum governance. And what we have witnessed is maximum government, really. So can take an ambassador car and get it serviced, and it will come out as an ambassador car. It won't come out as a Ferrari, or to tell happy a Jaguar. But the fact of the matter is that how the government addresses the structural issues in designing and implementing policies. You had a government, the government announced X number of vaccines would be available by December end. And then you saw that in the Supreme Court, the X became minus something. Similarly, there are 350 million children who are between the ages of 5 and 19. I don't know whether haven't heard anything about schools, about colleges. Yes, there has been an exam of ministers, but I don't know what's happening to the 300 million students. So those are issues and the economy rests on how successfully they vaccinate.
Good point. Suhail, your first take on the cabinet.
Operation successful, patient dead. So it's more an external facing rather than an internal recalibration. It sends out all the messages. We all knew that Ravi Shankar Prasad was a non-performer. We knew that Harshvardhan, but Harshvardhan, poor chap, alone hadn't messed up health. People like VK Paul and all should also be sacked, but they aren't being sacked. Mixed messages. I agree with Shankar and with what Sanjay said. The point is, nothing will change because the man at the top has not changed. Narendra Modi will remain Narendra Modi, which means he will be micromanaging, or the Prime Minister's office will micromanage. The ministers sadly will be second guessing the PM and the PMO. And in any corporate structure, there's no point hiring a CEO who the chairman doesn't allow to function. It's a very simple corporate structural problem. So if there's going to be interference, these guys are not going to be able to deliver. The message of hope should have also come qua the economy. There's been no change in the Ministry of Finance. I'm not saying Nirmala is good or bad. That's for the juries out on that. But the fact is, your pain points, which is the economy and health, you made a change without actually changing the edifice. So, you put a tarpaulin on an otherwise very, very bad building, saying, ki, haan, ab sab theek ho jayega. But I don't think it's going to happen. Well, let's live in hope. I think the one message that he sent out is more internal, as I said, to the cabinet members, that perform or perish. But again, the fact is that you've got ridiculous things like Ministry of Cooperation. Why can't these people, and I'm not at all advocating the use of proper grammar, but why can't they say the Minister for Cooperatives rather than Minister for Cooperation? It almost suggests that the cabinet is at an intestine war amongst itself, that you need a minister to help people cooperate.
And to borrow someone's joke, we know who's heading that Minister of Cooperation, Ministry of Cooperation. Smita, having done a lot of interviews with Dr. Swami, I'll say what Suhail hasn't said. Don't the changes have to be made from the right at the top? The finance, external affairs, these are areas where India is really lacking. Defense.
That would have been a bit too bold, I think, and I don't think he would have touched the big four. By and large, getting 12 people to resign, that itself can be termed as big, bold, and audacious. It's diverse, the new cabinet, and I don't think there was much of tinkering room that was available to him as far as the big four are concerned. The very fact that he's gotten rid of a whole lot of senior people who have more administrative experience in Delhi. In Parliament, in Delhi, in government here, than he himself has. He was Chief Minister when Ravi Shankar Prasad was in Vajpayee cabinet or when Javadekar was there. So, a whole bunch of people he's asked them to leave. So I think he's been mighty bold in doing that. The pandemic was going to claim some of the scalps, and without admitting it, by asking 12 people to leave, I think Modi has admitted that there were problems in decision-making, in implementation of government policies and programs. While the spokespersons of the parties will not admit that in TV debates or in their off-the-record briefings, the fact is that there must have been some kind of stock-taking done by the top echelons there in the BJP in government, to decide and to come up with this solution that, we have messed up and we need to sort this out. He seems to be annoyed, angry, and a man in a hurry right now. I think since 2019, with the way 2019 started off, they had a whole bunch of programs and policies which they wanted to implement. It began with Kashmir, it went on to Triple Talaq, several of them, including CAA, NRC, but couldn't do it because of the pandemic. So I think he knows that the next 2 years is the time that he has, and he's going to work with this new team.
Pawan, you're also the only politician on the panel. So the political messaging, really, are you convinced that the Prime Minister has made a admission of what was wrong and also overcome it, made the right changes, got the right people in place? Are you reassured?
Thank you, Priya. I really feel that cabinet reshuffles are cabinet reshuffles are cabinet reshuffles. We overinterpret them. There have been major cabinet reshuffles in the reigns of different prime minister, if you can call that a reign. And ministers go around like musical chairs. But we've got to go to the basics of trying to understand the system. There is an essential malaise. And that malaise is the centralization of power in the Prime Minister's office. If you don't understand that, you will not be able to ever evaluate a cabinet reshuffle in the correct perspective. So long as that malaise is not rectified, we have ministers appointed who are like elevated bureaucrats, and all initiative and impulse comes from the Prime Minister's office. I'll give you one example. The hapless Harshvardhan has been sacrificed for his non-performance, which is probably right in the case of Ministry of Health. But the National Disaster Management Authority is chaired by the Prime Minister. In March 2020, you declared there to be a national disaster because of the pandemic. All subsequent decisions under that are to be taken by the NDMA. And we know that there was a spectacular failure, a spectacular lack of anticipation and incompetence in the manner in which you were prepared for the second wave in particular. But the Prime Minister, of course, is not touched. The NDMA is micromanaged from the PMO. Senior bureaucrats are not touched. And
NDMA is under the ministerial charge of Home Ministry.
okay,
So-
under the Home Ministry, which is as sacrosanct as the Prime Minister's office. I'm just giving you an example. Secondly, frankly, I am quite flummoxed by the allocation of portfolios. I really thought that with so much exercise having gone behind this particular reshuffle, you have the all-important Minister of Health, Mansukh Mandavia, and in a key ministry at this stage of our national evolution, in the face of COVID, he's been given health, but not health only. A completely unrelated ministry called Chemicals and Fertilizers. Now you explain to me what's the rationale behind it. Let me give you some other examples. Think about it.
Pawan, I asked someone that question, and the answer I was given is pharmaceuticals comes under that. So he's going to also be prescribing your medicines.
Chemicals is a big enough charge in itself, and fertilizers as well. So, I mean, it's the most specious argument, especially given the importance of health today. Mr. Sonowal is port, shipping, and waterways, and suddenly he's also Minister of Ayush, Ayurveda. You have the situation of Mr. Ashwini Vaishnav, a talented person apparently, who has the all-important portfolio of railways. But it's enough for any cabinet minister that railways needs great attention. It's a ministry beyond ministries, but he's also given electronics and information technology. Is there a dearth of talent? Is there a dearth of talent? G. Kishan, look at culture and tourism. I'll just take another minute. Look at culture and tourism. Two vital sectors of our economy and of our national civilizational legacy. Kishan Reddy is made Minister of Culture, Tourism and Northeastern region. My question to you is, the BJP used to ridicule the UPA for always making a Minister of Culture and Tourism who did neither culture nor tourism. Here they have replicated it and also given this poor man Northeastern region, and he's wondering why.
Their logic is to give Northeast a boost qua tourism. That is their logic.
No, it is. But that could be done as part of policy of tourism without making him in charge of North affairs. Similarly, Mr. Nayak is the Minister of State in the Ministry of Tourism, but is also in charge of port, shipping and waterways. Now you can say shipping is important for tourism, but it's not, the logic doesn't hold. So, I mean, Meenakshi Lekhi, a talented person, well deserving finally of getting a place. She is Minister of State in External Affairs. She is also Minister of Culture. Now you tell me, I have served in the Ministry of External Affairs. How can you do External Affairs and be Minister of State for Culture, two separate portfolios? Obviously, there are overlaps between all portfolios. Thirdly, I want to say to you, I am really flummoxed also by this Ministry of Cooperation. What does it mean? So far, there was no cooperation in the cabinet, and it's a
Exactly what I said.
opaque and mysterious
Culture. Pawan, can I just ask you a question? Who heads the Indian Council for Cultural Relations?
Sahasra Buddhe.
From?
BJP.
Is this a quiz or what?
Yeah, no. Just wanted to ask you, wasn't the ICCR for years together under Indian Foreign Service?
At the DG level.
DG
The
level.
amazing thing
Why?
is,
Why did the ICCR, Indian Council for Cultural Relations, come under The Indian Foreign Service.
Because the ICCR was made as the specific arm of Ministry of External Affairs for the promotion of soft power of India.
So,
India's soft.
That's what.
that's what they expect Meenakshi Lekhi to do.
And very well done. But as Minister of State for External Affairs, she will not promote soft power.
Why?
Why? It's part of the diplomacy. I am saying you give a full portfolio, you answer questions in Parliament on that subject, and culture is far beyond merely the promotion of culture abroad. Look at the sheer richness of the cultural legacy of India and the intricacies you have to deal with. I'm just saying, you can find the rationale, Smita, if you like, and quiz me to find them too. My only answer is that there is, in spite of the fact that it's a reshuffle, I don't see much. And I'm also another final point. What about promotions and demotions? He's a personal friend, Anurag Thakur. He's promoted. He's the same man who was openly inciting violence at the time of he said, Desh ke gaddaron ko goli maro salon ko, and we have the video footage. It's a miracle he has not been arrested for incitement to violence. But he's promoted. What's the messaging? So I'm saying that there are many questions that need to be asked about this reshuffle. The best thing is to accept a reshuffle to be a reshuffle to be a reshuffle.
Well, Dr. Baru, I'm putting the hot potato right on your lap. So if you can, some of the questions that have been raised, do you agree with Pawan that at least, there's no synergy in terms of the multiple portfolios that have been given to a single person? Or does that usually happen also? Because you've been there from the inside track.
I mean, look, the point is, what was the motivation for this exercise? And on balance, if you look at the totality of the exercise, and the way in which it has been projected to the media by spokespersons of the Bharatiya Janata Party, it has been projected as an exercise that broad bases the caste composition of the Union Ministry. It is for the first time. I have never I've been in media for 30 years now, but in all my life, I've never seen an official briefing which gives the caste composition of the Union Ministry. And this is shocking. And coming from a political party that believes in Hindutva, that believes that caste has been used by other political parties to divide the Hindu community, that has been attacking the Yadavs and the Dalit parties and everybody else for saying that you are dividing the Hindu community, which is why the community is weak, which is why, we have never been able to have adequate power in this country. We are now the voice of the Hindu majority. And then you reconstitute a ministry and say so many SCs, so many STs, so many OBCs. I mean, we have not been told how many Kurmis, how many,
In a press release, Sanjay.
In a press release, right?
Unofficial press release. It wasn't an official press release.
Of the party, right? Now, so I don't think performance of individual ministers was the reason. Ravi Shankar Prasad, Kayast from Bihar removed, Kurmi R.P. Singh and Dalit Paras have been brought in. Javadekar Brahmin from Maharashtra removed, and Maratha Rane brought in. Kishan Reddy in Telangana, because the Reddys are being wooed by all the non-Velama parties and non-OBC parties. OBCs are with Congress, the Velamas are with TRS. So, between Rajshekhar Reddy's newly launched party and BJP, they're all. So, you go state by state. And then you go to Karnataka, everybody wants Yadurappa out. And so you put 5 chaps in Delhi so that, you have peace in Karnataka. This is all about management of the internal politics of the BJP. It has nothing to do with the governance or improving the quality of governance of the Union Ministry. In my judgment, as I have written, the entire exercise, the political exercise, the internal political management of the Bharatiya Janata Party, which is undergoing a significant transformation. I think it is significant. I've argued that in my new book, that the BJP of Atal Bihari Vajpayee was a Brahmin-dominated BJP. Murli Manohar Joshi, Arun Jaitley, Sushma Swaraj, Javadekar, And when Modi came to power in 2014, he inherited that upper caste dominated BJP. He has transformed it. Today, all the Brahmins are out. Of course, 3 of them died. Arun Jaitley, Sushma Swaraj, Manohar Parrikar passed away, but Javadekar is out. Nitin Gadkari demoted, you know. So you have it's interesting political transformation happening within the BJP. It is reconstituting itself as a party of the middle class. And therefore, you know, to me, governance, etc., is not such an interesting question.
Fair enough. So BJP has done what it does best. The Prime Minister has done more, looked at the political equation more than the administrative equation. Right, Shankar?
Basically, let me just go back to my opening, which is basically this is a succession plan in a PPP model. So he has brought in new energy youngsters. The expendable have been expended, persistent loyalty has been rewarded, and there is investment for the polls ahead. That's the essential thing. There is some synergy. I wouldn't say that there is no synergy. I think bringing education and skill development together, there is some amount of synergy there. There is also, I would say that Mansukh Mandaviya being put in charge of both health and I really want and wish that they had dismantled the fertilizer ministry, just like I want steel and other ministries to be dismantled, but that's a wish list. But bringing chemicals, pharmaceuticals along with health, they probably want to coordinate the response to the third wave if and when they happen. And as we see, we are actually issuing invitations for the third wave all over the country without masking. So that's the most serious concern. I think we have to look at the reshuffle as a political script and divorce it from expectations of outcomes we might see or whatever. That's the way to look at this. This is to energize the party, to energize the government. The Prime Minister clearly felt let down by his team, and he has taken the axe and wielded it in true Jhatka fashion. And now that he has a team there, we have to see how this team plays out. There are some of these so-called claim synergies are really bizarre. So, you know, Hardeep Puri has been put in charge of petroleum and natural gas. Dharmendra Pradhan held that post. I think one interesting thing is no petroleum and natural gas minister has lasted more than 3 years in the history since its formation in 66. And Dharmendra Pradhan lasting there for 6 years is an event in itself. But the fact is that between 2014 and now, India imports more crude and more petroleum than it ever did. And so the promise of making it less dependent and all is out of the window. So I think giving it to Hardeep Puri is to try and make diplomacy work there. But he is lucky in a way if OPEC breaks up and all the drama that's going around that we might just have.
Just been rewarded for delivering on the Central Vista project.
So, yeah, no, that is the loyalty rewards program. So, I'm confused.
Which is also there. Okay. I'm going
which is also there.
Sohail, your take on all this, you know, where does governance stand in all this? Which are the ministers that you have expectations from the new ones?
I want to make something more, I want to say something more dramatic and more unpalatable for the BJP. Don't be under the mistaken notion that the BJP is any longer a party with a committed ideology. They are now like the rest. Ideology has been given the boot. The BJP has recognized that their only virtue of existence is the virtue of power. Everything that they're doing is linked to that. You remember that this was the party which used to make fun of corruption and, you know, which used to castigate corruption. Suvendu Adhikari's face was still on the BJP website when he was accepted in the BJP. Kripa Shankar Singh, the list is enormously long. Narayan Rane himself, the so-called strong Maratha or Maratha strongman. Today, what Modi has done, which people have not analyzed or people are not talking about, is Modi has taken the veil of ideology off the BJP. And he's saying, hum bhi sabke saath, sabki tarah hain. Hammam mein ab sab nange ho gaye hain. So let's not give BJP any more of these virtuous accolades. Oh, that this is a party for Hindutva. This is a party only to stay in power. Which, by the way, there's no harm because it's a political party. It's not the ministry of charity. Number two, what Modi's also done is these are equations not for performance. These equations have been formed with polls in mind. As Sanjay said, with all these caste permutation, combination, blah, blah, blah. My worry is that the next 2 years will again, in true BJP style, be spent on winning elections rather than on satisfying the aspirations of Indians and the Indian people. If that continues to happen like it did between January 2021 and April 2021, Qua Bengal, blah, 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 we're in deep, deep trouble. So let's treat this as a warning signal. If you think that this cabinet expansion is for performance, it is not. It is political. It is ideologically starved. It is ideologically neutral. And the danger is that you've put a team in place and the coach is now saying, you guys play football, I'm off to manage the elections. That's the worst thing that can happen for a country which today is facing a triple disaster. A disaster in economy, a disaster in terms of health, and a disaster in terms of investor confidence. Shankar didn't allude to that. I was hoping he did. What Kane did in France, what Devas is going to do in the US, these are going to be big, big disasters for India's investment outlook. No one is talking about it, strangely. But these are my
I'll call you
three.
for another show, Sohail. I'm going to interrupt you and get Smita in quickly also.
Please.
Smita, so is a political more than an administrative reshuffle?
I just want to answer a couple of points which I just took down when the other speakers were speaking. I agree with Dr. Baru about the caste factor. Out of 77 ministers, when you have 48 from non-upper caste, I think the BJP wants to shelve this image of being this upper caste Baniya party, which for a long time they were blamed. So I think now the party ideology वगैरह तो अलग बात है, but I think now it's back to that drawing board of Mandal Kamandal, right? First they used to have the Mandal ke liye they had VP Singh and the others, right? Now they don't. Now it is Mandal Kamandal fused within the BJP, and that's how they're going to go into the 2022 elections, and that's how they're going to go into the 2024 elections. A combination of these two factors, this whole social justice system, Antyodaya, going back to then Deen Dayal Upadhyay's thing of the last man in the line should get the benefits of all government policies. The second point was about when Pawan Verma was talking about Anurag Thakur being the INB minister. Let's not forget that INB minister has had some stellar people in the past, like HKL Bhagat of the 1984 riots. So, that is one point. The third point, which I just wrote down, was about the Petroleum and Natural Gas Ministry. It was a decision taken in Delhi and not in Bombay like in the past. Now, the question of maximum government, which the BJP used to keep talking about, I think that is over. I don't think that they can ever now talk about minimum government and maximum governance, because now they have such a jumbo cabinet. And if he cannot deliver in the next 2 years, because that is why I said, I come back to what I started with, that he's a man in a hurry. Because going into 2024 elections after 2 terms in office, they cannot, for the life of God, hope to win a third term if they don't deliver in the next 2 years. It will be too late if he's not able to deliver.
This is a time when he can't blame Jawaharlal Nehru.
Pawan, last word to a politician, though I think there's a danger in that. But anyway, let's see.
I just want to say we should look at this reshuffle as a mid-course changing of the pack, reshuffling the pack. When we try to interpret it in terms of a new spearhead towards a new form of qualitatively different governance,
Correct.
we are making a mistake. Most governments have this kind of reshuffle towards the middle of the term, and this is what has happened. On the point of ideology, which Sohail mentioned, I think that they will shed every other aspect of ideology, and they have already done that in the pursuit of power, except the one of Hindutva, because that is an aid to the assumption of acquisition of power. Polarization is a very important and key card in the BJP's electoral planning. So however much they try to rectify this image of the BJP as being inclusive, let's accept it, and Bengal has shown it most spectacularly, that this card will remain. Now, let's get beyond the reshuffle and get on with our lives, because it's not such a major milestone as you think.
On that note, thank you so much, all of you, for joining in and for this very interesting discussion. And thank you all for watching this show.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.